Please read every instruction before attending. That was the subject line of the email my daughter sent me 12 days before her wedding. At first, I thought Melissa had forwarded one of those fussy venue notices about parking, meal choices, or the order of photographs. I was sitting alone at my kitchen table, drinking coffee from Daniel's chipped blue mug, while a stripe of September sunlight crossed the cabinets he had built by hand. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator humming and the faint tick of the clock above the stove. Then I opened the attachment. The document was 6 pages long. Across the top, in elegant gold lettering, it said, "Wedding Expectations for the Bride's Immediate Family." I read that title twice. My name is Eleanor Price. I was 63 years old, widowed for nearly 4 years, and not accustomed to being given instructions on how to behave by the child I had raised. Daniel and I had spent 32 years running Price Auto and Tire on the edge of town. He repaired engines and transmissions. I handled payroll, suppliers, insurance claims, and customers who believed yelling made their cars easier to fix. We never became wealthy, but we paid off our house, saved carefully, sent both of our children through college without loans, and retired with enough to live comfortably. Daniel died before he could enjoy much of that comfort. Melissa was 31 and marrying Preston Vale, whose family owned 5 luxury car dealerships across the state. Preston had smooth hair, polished shoes, and a habit of glancing around my home as if he were silently calculating its resale value. His mother, Celeste, treated every conversation like an audition. His father, Howard, spoke mostly about business, property, and people he considered important. I had tried to be generous about them. Melissa loved Preston. That was what I kept telling myself. Then I began reading the rules. Rule 3 said I was to arrive no earlier than 30 minutes before the ceremony because the bridal suite was reserved for core participants. Rule 5 instructed me to wear a mushroom-colored gown chosen by Celeste so the bride's family would not compete visually with the Vale family in photographs. Rule 8 said Daniel's repair shop should not be discussed. If anyone asked what he had done, I was to say he worked in automotive operations. Rule 11 directed me not to approach Preston's parents unless they initiated conversation. Rule 14 assigned my son, Owen, and me to a reception table near the service corridor to preserve family flow. I felt something inside me harden, but I kept reading. Rule 19 was underlined. The bride's mother will present the promised pound. Melissa had started with a pound sign, then corrected it to a dollar amount. $45,000 home contribution during the 8:15 p.m. Family appreciation toast. The envelope should be large and cream-colored for photography purposes. There was even a note beneath it. Please do not transfer funds early. The visual presentation is important. I stared at those words until the screen blurred. 6 months earlier, Melissa and Preston had found a 4-bedroom house in a gated development. They could afford the mortgage, they said, but needed help with the deposit. I had agreed to give them $45,000 because I believed I was helping my daughter begin her marriage with security. I had also paid the deposits for the florist and photographer and placed my credit card on file with the country club for the final catering balance. At no point had anyone mentioned that my money was part of the entertainment. The change in Melissa had not happened overnight. During the first months of her relationship with Preston, she still laughed about growing up above the noise of air tools and called the shop her second home. Then her stories became polished. Daniel had become an entrepreneur. I had become semi-retired from administration. When Celeste asked whether we belonged to a country club, Melissa answered before I could and changed the subject. Each moment seemed too small to challenge. I told myself she was adjusting to a different social world, not rejecting ours. That was how I had helped build the problem, one excused insult at a time. I had even ignored the way she treated my wedding contributions. The florist deposit became secured. The photographer became handled. My name never appeared when she thanked people. I did not need public praise, but I should have noticed how easily assistance turned into entitlement when no gratitude was required. I did not cry. The hurt was too clean for tears. It was the kind of pain that does not break you open. It closes a door. I printed the rules, placed the pages beside my coffee, and opened my laptop again. The final catering payment was due at noon. It was $19,600. I called the club. A coordinator named Marissa answered. When I asked her to remove my card, she assumed I wanted to replace it. "There will be no replacement from me," I said. She warned that the $19,600 balance was due that day, and the meal could not be confirmed without it. I understand. Melissa and Preston have stated in writing that they control the vendors and finances. Please contact them. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I carried my coffee outside and watered the late-blooming roses along the fence. I had just reached the third bush when my phone began vibrating on the patio table. Melissa called 5 times. I answered the 6th. "Mom, what did you do?" Melissa demanded when I finally answered. "The club says your card was removed." I removed it. "We don't have $19,000. Preston's card is nearly full and mine is carrying the florist balance." "Then speak with his parents. They say the bride's family covers the meal." "That tradition should have been discussed before you sent me rules about hiding your father and staying out of sight. It isn't a rule book, it's a coordination document. The title says expectations." She exhaled hard. "Are you punishing me over the dress?" "No, I am respecting your decision to take full control. Money is part of control." Her voice lowered. "What about the house deposit?" "We will discuss it later." I ended the call before she could argue. After the call, I walked through the house and noticed how many choices I had made around Melissa's reactions. I had delayed repairing the roof because of her wedding. I had postponed visiting my sister because Melissa might need help with appointments. I had agreed to a menu I disliked, a venue Daniel would have mocked, and a guest list filled with people I had never met. I opened the wedding folder on my desk. Every receipt told the same story. I had been useful but never included. The realization embarrassed me, not because I had given generously, but because I had pretended generosity could purchase closeness. I closed the folder and put it in a drawer. My hands stayed steady. For months I had feared that objecting to Preston's family would push Melissa away. The moment I stopped protecting her comfort, my own began to return. Owen came by after school carrying cinnamon rolls. He was 34, taught science, and had Daniel's patient eyes. He found the rules on the counter, read them, and flushed. "Automotive operations?" he said. "Dad rebuilt half the engines in this county. Apparently grease is not elegant enough for the Vale family." He reached the final rule. "You are not giving them that money." "I have not decided." He looked at me. "You already know." Before I could answer, the front door opened. Melissa still had a key, and she entered with Preston behind her. She carried a garment bag. He carried his anger. "Eleanor, Melissa had to take a personal loan at 14% because you withdrew the catering payment," he said. "I declined to pay after receiving instructions to hide my husband's life and sit out of sight." This emotional reaction is exactly what the guidelines were meant to prevent. Owen rose, but I touched his arm. Melissa draped the garment bag over Daniel's old leather chair. "Celeste bought your dress. Please wear it, follow the schedule, and let us get through the weekend." I unzipped the bag. The gown was beige-gray, shapeless, and expensive enough to be deliberate camouflage. "I have something else to wear." "You can't," Melissa said. "Celeste planned the photographs." "Celeste is not dressing me." Preston glanced at Daniel's chair, cracked along one arm from decades of use. "You should replace that. It makes the room smell like a garage." Nobody spoke. I looked at Melissa. She stared at the floor. Daniel had rested in that chair after chemotherapy and listened to her cry over her first broken engagement. She knew what it meant. Still, she did not defend him. I zipped the garment bag. "Take this and leave." Preston laughed. "You will wreck her wedding over a chair and a dress?" No, I will not finance people who despise where their money came from. We close on the house next Wednesday, he snapped. The deposit is not optional. It was a gift, not a debt. You promised. Under circumstances that no longer exist, I held Melissa's gaze. Return my key before you go. She removed it from her ring and set it on the table. Owen locked the door behind them. Only then did my knees begin to shake. You did the right thing, he said. I know. Knowing did not make it painless. The rehearsal dinner was the next evening at a downtown steakhouse. I considered staying home, but absence would let Melissa call me unstable or ashamed. I wanted to see the truth without anyone translating it. I wore a dark navy trouser suit and Daniel's silver watch. Celeste looked me over when I entered. The approved dress would have photographed more softly, she said. I am not being photographed tonight. Her smile tightened. The Vale family occupied the long center table beneath the chandelier. Their friends and business associates filled the best seats. Owen and I were assigned to a two-person table beside the kitchen doors, where servers hurried past with trays and hot air. I could move our place cards, Owen whispered. No, I want to remember this accurately. Melissa never visited our table. Preston praised his parents during the toasts for their limitless financial and emotional support. Neither he nor anyone else mentioned Daniel. Before dessert, I stood. Let's go, I told Owen. We left without saying goodbye. At home, I sat in Daniel's chair with the rules in my lap. I remembered him teaching Melissa to drive in an empty school car park. She stalled 6 times, and he never raised his voice. You don't shame someone while they're trying to move forward, he had told me. That was the man she wanted, reduced to a polished phrase. I cried for a few quiet minutes. Then I opened the desk drawer where I kept the cashier's check for $45,000. The next morning I returned it to the bank and restored the money to my account. I bought the thick cream envelope Melissa had requested. Inside I placed $180, approximately the cost of Owen's meal and mine, the guidelines with Rule 11 circled in red, and a note. You asked me to behave as a distant guest, and I have respected that request. Distant guests do not provide house deposits or wedding balances. Enclosed is payment for the 2 seats assigned to Owen and me. I sealed it and slept more deeply than I had in months. The wedding began at 4:30 on Saturday at Cedar Ridge Country Club. White chairs faced a lake beneath a warm, windless sky. Owen picked me up wearing one of Daniel's charcoal suits. I wore a navy long-sleeve dress and the silver watch. You look like yourself, he said. That is the idea. An assistant directed us to the 4th row. Preston's relatives filled the first 3. Melissa looked radiant when she entered. For one painful instant, I saw the little girl who once ran through my garden insisting she was a princess. Then she noticed my navy dress, and irritation flashed beneath her smile. Their printed vows promised partnership, loyalty, and honor. I listened to every word. The reception ballroom glittered with white flowers, crystal lights, and gold stands. My place card waited at table 19, beside the service doors exactly as promised. I'm beginning to admire her consistency, Owen murmured. I almost laughed. We ate small decorative courses, while the Vale family accepted compliments at the head table. Preston circulated among dealership owners. Melissa posed beside the flower wall whenever the camera turned toward her. At 8:10, the band stopped. The master of ceremonies announced a family presentation. Howard described everything his family had purchased: the open bar, rehearsal dinner, and honeymoon suite, earning applause after each item. Then, Preston took the microphone. Melissa's mother has a special gift to help us begin our new life. The room turned toward me. Melissa motioned urgently for me to approach. Owen leaned closer. Still sure? Yes. I crossed the ballroom with the envelope in my handbag. I did not hurry or look at the watching guests. The photographer raised his camera. Preston looked pleased. Melissa whispered, "Hand it over and face the camera." The flash fired as I placed the cream envelope in her hands. "Thank you, Mom," she announced, and nearby tables applauded. She should have waited to open it, but entitlement had made patience unnecessary. She broke the seal, drew out the guidelines, and saw the red circle. The folded cash followed. Then she read my note. Her smile vanished. Color drained from her face as she counted the money and read the words again. Preston leaned over. "What is it?" She handed him the note. His confidence collapsed so completely that he suddenly looked ordinary. I gave them a polite nod and walked toward the exit. Behind me, with the microphone still live, Preston muttered, "This is a joke." Several guests heard him. I reached the coat check corridor before Preston caught up and grabbed my arm. I looked down at his hand until he released me. Melissa rushed after him, gathering her skirt in one fist. "Where is the check?" "There is no check. We close Wednesday. The money must be in escrow Monday." "Then speak to your lender." Preston stepped closer. "You cannot withdraw a promised gift. We relied on it." "You relied on my silence." Melissa glanced at guests gathering near the ballroom doors. "Mom, please, not here. You chose here. You chose the time, the envelope, and the photographer." "I was trying to include you. You were using my money to create a photograph while keeping me out of your life." Her mouth trembled. "You are ruining my wedding." I paid for our seats, followed the schedule, and delivered the envelope. The wedding is continuing. Preston called me vindictive. "Your family asked my daughter to conceal her father's work," I said. "You insulted his chair in his home. You accepted my money while treating me like staff. You do not get to choose my response." Melissa began crying. Her tears had solved problems for years because I always rushed to stop them. This time, I stayed still. "I thought you wanted me to have a good life," she said. "I do, but a life built on contempt will collapse whether I pay for its foundation or not." Owen arrived with my wrap. "Dad would have been ashamed of this document." Melissa flinched. Preston told him to stay out of it. "You put Dad in it when you rewrote his life," Owen replied. As I turned away, Melissa caught my wrist gently. "What am I supposed to do?" She had asked that after every crisis I had quietly solved. I removed her hand. "You and your husband will decide together." Owen and I walked into the cool night. Music resumed behind us. The wedding continued. No walls collapsed. A mother had simply stopped paying for her own humiliation. After several miles, Owen asked whether I was all right. "I will be," I said. "So will I." On Monday, Melissa called repeatedly. When I answered that evening, she said the lender would not extend the deadline, and Preston's parents refused to contribute more. "We will lose the earnest deposit." "I understand." "You could still wire the money." "I will not." "So you're choosing money over your daughter?" "No, I am choosing to stop using money as proof that I love you." The sale failed on Wednesday. They lost their earnest deposit and moved into a small rental near the interstate. The next afternoon, Preston came to the house alone. I saw him through the front window and stepped onto the porch without opening the door behind me. He did not apologize. He said Melissa was overwhelmed, the lender was becoming impatient, and grown adults did not withdraw commitments because of hurt feelings. "The check will remain canceled," I said. He tried a different approach. He reminded me that the house had a guest room where I could stay someday, as though my own paid-off home had vanished. He said grandchildren would need space. He suggested Daniel would have wanted Melissa protected. That was the only moment my calm nearly broke. "Do not use my husband to collect money you believe you are owed." His expression hardened. "You will lose your daughter over this." If the only bridge between us is a check, then there is no bridge. I went inside and locked the door. Through the glass, I watched him stand on the porch for several seconds, stunned that the conversation had ended without his permission. Owen received a message accusing him of turning me against her. He replied, "Mom read your rules herself." 3 weeks later, Melissa came to my house alone. She stood on the porch in jeans and a raincoat, holding a cardboard box. Inside were the beige dress and the guidelines. Across the first page she had written, "I was cruel." Preston said the document would stop his mother criticizing everything, she explained. Celeste drafted most of it. I edited it. You added the house presentation? Yes. Why? Howard planned to announce everything they had paid for. Preston said my side needed something that looked substantial. It was substantial. I know. No. You knew the amount. You did not understand what it represented. That money came from holidays your father and I skipped. Mornings he opened the shop before sunrise, and years I worked beside him. It came from the life you told me to hide. Rain tapped the porch roof. I was ashamed, she whispered. Of us? Of how they saw us. Then I started seeing us through them. The honesty hurt more than the rules. I let her inside. At the kitchen table she told me Preston blamed her for losing the house. Celeste called the wedding tainted. Howard had billed them for honeymoon upgrades charged to his company. Their rental was small and his parents refused to help. Are you asking me for money? No, I came to apologize. An apology is not a bridge by itself. I know. What happens next matters more. I told her my financial support had ended. I would not pay their debt, replace the deposit, or cover the catering loan. I would not attend events where Daniel's work was mocked. Preston could not enter my house unless he apologized directly. His parents were not welcome. Melissa listened without bargaining. The boundaries were tested almost immediately. Melissa called once to ask whether I would guarantee a consolidation loan. I said no. Celeste sent a long message describing family unity and warning that public disagreements could damage Preston's reputation. I deleted it without replying. Howard mailed me a copy of the original house offer with the lost earnest deposit highlighted, as though a yellow marker could turn their assumption into my obligation. I placed the papers in the same drawer as the wedding folder. Owen worried that I was becoming too hard. I told him hardness and clarity were not the same thing. I still answered Melissa when she called respectfully. I still cared whether she was safe. What I stopped doing was stepping between her and every consequence before it reached her. That distinction changed both of us. She learned that my love could remain present while my wallet stayed closed. I learned that saying no did not make me cruel, even when someone cried after hearing it. Then she asked to see Daniel's chair. She knelt beside it and touched the worn arm. I remember him sleeping here after chemo. So do I. I said nothing when Preston insulted it. I wanted him to believe I belonged with his family. Belonging that requires betrayal is not belonging. She left an hour later. I did not forgive her immediately. Forgiveness given before consequences can become another form of rescue. But I believed her apology enough to watch what she did next. Over the following months, Melissa called without asking for anything. She paid for our lunches, visited Daniel's grave on his birthday, and framed an old photograph of the repair shop. Preston never apologized. He blamed Melissa for the failed purchase and claimed I was controlling her through money I was no longer giving. Without the house, wedding excitement, or my rescues, their marriage narrowed to ordinary rooms and unpaid bills. 6 months after the wedding, Melissa moved out. I kept thinking about Dad's chair, she told me. Preston saw something that held our family history and noticed only a smell he disliked. She rented a modest apartment, began counseling, and repaid the catering loan by selling jewelry and canceling trips. Their divorce became final the next spring. I did not celebrate. A failed marriage is still grief. But with each hard decision, my daughter became more recognizable. I used part of the $45,000 to replace my roof and kept some for emergencies. With the rest, I took Owen to Alaska, the journey Daniel and I had postponed for 20 years. One gray morning, Owen and I stood on the ship's deck as mountains rose above the water and a glacier shone blue beneath the clouds. He held Daniel's old camera. I wore his watch. He should be here, Owen said. He is. For once, the words did not feel like something people say because they have nothing better. When we returned, I painted the sitting room warm yellow and had Daniel's chair cleaned and repaired. I asked the upholsterer to leave the worn panel beneath the arm. Some marks are not damage. They prove a life was lived there. Melissa visits now. Our relationship is smaller, more careful, and more honest. She does not have a key. She knocks, and I open the door because I choose to. Nearly 2 years after the wedding, she found a photograph of Daniel beneath the Price Auto and Tire sign, grease on his shirt, and one hand raised against the sun. She framed it for her apartment. "I don't call it automotive operations," she told me. "Good." People imagine the decisive moment was when I placed the envelope in Melissa's hands. It was not. It happened alone at my kitchen table, when I understood that generosity offered under contempt is not love, it is surrender. I had spent my life believing a good mother absorbed discomfort, so her children would never feel it. I confused rescuing with devotion and silence with peace. But peace built on silence belongs to the person demanding it. Real peace came when I removed my card, asked for my key, and walked out of the ballroom without explaining myself to every person watching. It deepened when Melissa returned, and I refused to erase the consequences for her. I still love my daughter. Love did not disappear when the check did. It simply stopped being confused with payment. Every morning I sit in Daniel's chair with coffee and watch light move across the cabinets he built. The house is quiet, but it no longer feels empty. It feels protected. Whenever I remember the rulebook, I no longer feel small. I remember the clarity it gave me. Sometimes people tell you exactly how little space they intend to give you. You do not have to beg for more. You can leave the arrangement, take your dignity with you, and close the door gently behind you.